I'd like to tell you something about Buurtzorg. We are very famous thanks to Frederic Laloux. Everyone is familiar with the Frederic Laloux book? It's always the same. I do a brief introduction about Buurtzorg, then I tell how it started and how we went on and what we encountered. Yes, we started about 10 years ago in a new organization and a care delivery model with one team and 4 nurses. So it's a very small, tiny startup delivering community care, and that's going out to people's houses, helping patients with their lives and with their problems, medical problems and their aids. Closely working together with GPs and working with hospitals and working with physiotherapists and all kinds of services. Right now we've got about 10,000 leaders in about 900 independent teams. There's still a small back office, about 50 people in the staff. And we've got 18 coaches who help the teams. We serve about 70,000 patients a year. We also got 4,000 people working in the more social care, more social domestic care, with a revenue about 315 million euros a year. That's for a quick scan. But first I want to talk a bit about my experiences before I was working with Buurtzorg. When I was 14 years old, I started a band. We had an old piano in our house and I really liked playing a little bit on the piano. And a boy living next door to me had a drum kit and he said, well, we should start a band. And he put over his drum kit in my parents' home. My mother didn't want to spoil our dreams, so we sat over there and we tried to make music. And then another boy came in and said, well, I like to be a rock star also. Well, we said, then you need to buy a guitar. So he bought a guitar and he also got in. And we practiced and we practiced and we practiced. We wanted to be rock stars. And then one day an uncle of mine came in and he said, well, wait, maybe you should focus on weddings. Well, rock stars don't focus on weddings. But maybe you should try it. And maybe it's fun. So he explained a bit about weddings. There are a lot of weddings. You want live music, you can earn a little bit of money, you can act, you can experience performance, you go on stage, so you do everything you need to be a rock star in the end. So we did, and we had a lot of fun. And before I knew it, we were working in a team with 5 persons, sometimes 6, sometimes one went off and then another one came by. But we did, I think, about 3-4 weddings a week, but we never thought of it as a business, but we were just doing the things we were doing. And actually, we had a lot of fun, we had also a lot of responsibility, and sometimes people think, well, playing in a band is just for fun, but we also had our problems. I remember the time when we stood in the wrong place at the wrong evening. It's a bit of a problem. I remember the PA system broke down just when you wanted to start, and I remember the drummer who broke his leg a day before some performances. But when the problems we're always solving them without any clue or without any management or any procedures or protocols. We just fixed the problems. And so there was no management involved, so that was some kind of a hobby. But then my parents said, well, now you're 18, 19 years old, you should do something for a real living. So I went to the university and studied public administration. And public administration is a typical study of what you do when you haven't got a clue what to do. You go out for public administration. But then I had my master's and I went to, I entered the healthcare organization, the healthcare industry as a consultant. And these days, it was around the mid-90s, there were big changes because the government was thinking, well, it's too much of a non-profit environment. They should more act like marketplace, and they should more be focused on market and on all these good stuff Taylor had brought in at the companies, we should copy that, and we should be also there. Those freedom of choice was very important. They should be more efficient. There was everything what was normal at the businesses, we should copy that for healthcare. So I had studied all these things, so I went on as a consultant for 10 years, and we did it all. We helped organizations merging, we implemented call centers, we introduced customer relationship management because they spoke of patients. We said, no, they're not patients, they're customers. And you should serve customers, not patients. And we did task and job specialization with all logics from the markets. We had business intelligence. We did everything what consultants did these days. And in fact, the board was very happy with it. They thought, well, we are doing very good. And that is what is needed right now. So I thought, well, okay. When the board is happy and they are paying the bills, so then I am happy. But somehow the changes were also very disastrous because when you look deeper what happened within the 10 years, there was a lot of fragmentation. A lot of patients had sometimes 7 or 8 different healthcare providers coming on because everyone did their own task. And there were a lot of standardization was introduced. There were a lot of wrong incentives introduced because when you stay longer with a patient, then you earn more money. That's not really helping people to reintegrate or we call it getting better. And we had a lot of data and we had a lot of information, but it was all about the processes we introduced and not about good care and really happy customers. So sometimes it felt a bit strange because when you're doing just for fun a hobby, everything is doing great. People are happy, we were happy, we earned money, and there was no management at all. And then for 10 years I introduced everywhere management and procedures and all kinds of things with a lot of management, but in the end very dissatisfied professionals and very dissatisfied customers also. So somehow it felt a bit strange. There's a gut feeling for, well, maybe it's not alright, but I didn't have really an explanation for that. It just felt a bit strange. But then I think it was around 2006. Jos de Blok was a colleague of mine within the firm we worked together before he started Buurtzorg. And one day he said, well, I'm going to start Bootsup and start my own nursing company because what we did the last 10 years, it's bullshit, it's not working, we should do it the other way around. And me as a consultant, I thought, okay, I really want to help you. And what was he asking me? Please help me with the IT systems and with the back office organizations. And I thought, well, that's nice to do. But how do I earn a living from a nursing company with 4 nurses located in Enschede? So the first years it was some kind of just a gesture for Jos to help him organizing the way he wanted. So we had a lot of discussions. I remember the book from Eckhart Winston. It's only available in Dutch. Secrets are all only available in Dutch. But it was a book we read in these years. It was very about splitting into cells. Dus when a cell is becoming too big, you got to split it into another cell because otherwise you get too much coordination slack and too much specific tasks to organize things. So when a cell is becoming too big, you should split it. Well, and the magic number within Buurtzorg became 12. When a team is becoming bigger than 12 nurses or nurse assistants, then we've got to split them up. And it's also non-negotiable. So people know when they come into Buurtzorg and they come into a team, when the team is very successful, sometimes they need to split. And sometimes it's really feeling like a divorce because they're working in a team and everything is going well and they have to split. But it's very important in our philosophy. Jos being a nurse himself, had a very strong vision on care. That's also very important, because when it was depending on me, I didn't know how to serve a patient. So I only said for you, I'm not about healthcare, and I'm still not about nursing. So I only organize and facilitate back offices and IT. But you need also a very strong vision on how you want to do it. And it was different from what was happening these years. The one over there is Professor Nonaka. He was from, in fact, he was, I think, the godfather of Agile. But that's later on what I learned. I met him once in Tokyo, and he had 5 minutes time, but he sat there and we talked about 2 hours. He was very interesting man. But he was very what he wrote down about learning and how you knowledge, intangible knowledge, how you create it and how you exchange it. We learned a lot and we read a lot about it. And what I also was very inspiring for me was the starfish and the spider. It's about when a starfish is losing one leg, then it's still growing on, and the leg was divided, is going a starfish by itself. So you can never kill an organization or never kill a cell, and that's quite different with a spider. When you cut off a piece of a spider, then it's dead. And it's about the leaderless organizations, and that's quite of a contradiction with what we are hearing today, because we're all talking about leadership, and the book was about leaderless organizations, and that's what I like as a vision, because I think all the nurses working within Buurtzorg are all leaders. Of there is no leaderness, but they're all working together. So we started in 2006 with these independent teams of max 12 organizations, of 12 nurses, and they were responsible again for the total process. So they were not only told what task to do within which time, but they had all the freedom to organize their professional, what they've learned to do it in practice. Yeah.
Why the magic number of 12?
Well,
how did you get there?
It's not a lottery, but we had some figures. I think in the Norwegian army, they use a magic number of 8. And 12 was not a really, there was no investigations about it, but we were just talking, well, 10, it could be 12, but more than 12, then it's hard to organize the routes, and you need, because we also had a population of about 25,000 people to serve, and then we thought about 12. It's starting with a guess, and then in the end it becomes a rule. But you need also symbols and figures were important. But I don't think Buurtzorg would be less successful when the magic number was 11 or 13.
And you started with 12 and stayed with 12?
Yeah.
And it's worked out also?
Yep. Yeah, but when teams start, they start sometimes with 3 or 4 nurses. But when they grow and they come up, then they have to split. You can get smaller, but they can't become bigger. So they had to organize their complete process. And my experiences before Buurtzorg were that a team could serve was helped by a lot of back office administrations. They didn't have to find their own colleagues. They didn't have to find a place to work. They didn't have to find all these kinds of procedures for quality assurance. But when we started, they had to be like entrepreneurs. They had to be like it felt like their own company. And I heard someone saying, it was quite in the beginning, and he told to me, well, I start also with Buurtzorg. I started my own company. So, oh, okay, that's a bit strange, but this is how they felt. They felt like starting their own company within a bigger organization. This organization of the complete process was very important. No more task specialization. We're very keen on reduction of complexity because I also experienced there was a lot of complexity coming in throughout the years. When the company is growing, it's growing bigger and bigger, and every incident or every everything what's happening is also is a quite normal reaction from the organization to put a rule on it or a KPI or a procedure on that. But I'm always keen on complexity and always try to fight this. I had about the number of 12. Working as generalists also was very important for us to have to position them as generalists, so they could work together within a team and doing all patients who are coming in, and not only a sub-selection from patients. Quite high level of education, especially when you look at other companies. They, because of the Taylorian logic, they hired less educated people because it was more profitable within the tasks. But we said, well, the educational level is very important, so we take the higher ones, the higher educated nurses. And it was very funny in the beginning when we started with Buurtzorg. Some companies brought their expensive nurses to us. Well, you want these expensive nurses? Well, you can have them because they're far more too expensive. That's what they didn't say, but that's what was really happening. And because of the shortage of nurses right now, you could also foresee that it was very stupid to let them go. But it was some kind of the ideas about this period. The teams got their own educational budget, and they got their own housing, their office. And I found out that they are far more inventive in finding the right housing than a facility manager can ever do. Some teams have the far most offices in, for example, Amsterdam, and they don't pay a lot of money for it because they're all connected. This nurse is connected to the people within the church, and the people within the church are connected to the governance, and they're all focused on their own. And they get their offices sometimes for free or for a very small budget. And when you put on a facility manager to negotiate about the office, then you're out. Then you're paying 600 or 700 euros a month. And when they come in and, well, do you have any space in this beautiful office? Yeah, of course, you can sit over there. It's a far better way to get an office. So these informal networks are very important within our organizational philosophy. And I recognized when it grew, hey, that's what we did when I played in this band. And that's what effectively these teams do. And I counted it because I thought this number of 12, but there are 12 of them. But this is a typical team. They started very, they're very eager to quit their own, their old organization, especially in the time when we grew. So they started their own company, and they asked Jos to come over. Sometimes they were with 3 of them or 4 of them. Can we start our own team here in wherever? And then we asked, well, did you thought about getting patients? Yes, we already went to the GP, and the GP is very, when we start, the GP is very fond of us, and he will bring patients to us, and we already connected to, and we have a nice office over there, so they are all organizing things before they even started. And then Jos came in and said, well, you're professionals, you know what to do, just start over and begin your own team. And what in 10 years it was buzzing around. When you want your job back and when you want a nurse with a professional pride, just start your own team within Buurtzorg. And I also encountered a deep devotion of these people. They were, I spoke a lot of them, but they all felt like if they were freed out of the ideas of doing more tasks in less time, all these things with these Taylorian logics, they felt it that it wasn't good, but they thought, well, it isn't, we can't avoid it, so we should learn to deal with it. But within Buurtzorg, it buzzed around, well, you can do your job again and we can organize it ourselves. And we never, ever in these first 6, 7, 8 years, we never had any campaign to recruit people. They came to us with tons of CVs every week, just trying to start a team. It's when I come to think of it, I still think it was very, very strange. It really touched me because when I was working as a consultant, we did everything within this logic from then, and now we were actually doing nothing. And they were all coming to us. The only thing we said, we need to pay salaries, always on time and always the right things. And we have to send out the bills, but otherwise we can't get any. We haven't got any profit. So that's the only things were really important. All these other things, or HR, or facility management, or quality assurance, or we haven't even think about it or thought about it. But it came in very, very slowly, and we still are very keen on keep it simple, keep it less, don't make it any complexer than it is. Because we started, for example, with 4 registration codes, because you need codes just to pay salaries. But sometimes, for example, when an incident happens, well, we need a code for this. So no, we don't need a code for this. Yes, we do, because otherwise we don't know how much people spend on education. Well, that's not really important if we do know. If we don't want to know that, because they got their educational budget and that's enough. Yes, but I think these people within this team are not doing any educational. No, it's not our problem. It's a problem from the team. So we shouldn't focus on that. So we don't need a code. But it's always when you're not keen on it, it slips in and it becomes more complex and complex and complex. Well, how we support the teams. It's design and culture. When you're looking at design, we always make it very simple. It sounds simple, but it's in fact it's very complicated to make things very simple. Because there are always new regulations and more regulations and inspection and accountants and all these kinds of specialists who want to make things complex. So I always ask why, sometimes 20, 30 times a day, why? And someday I read a book about business zombies. Those are procedures within organizations who nobody knows why they exist. And there are a lot of, sometimes I come in, when I come into other companies, I always make this business zombies investigation. I always start within the quality assurance system with these 400 or 500 procedures, and then just pick out one procedure and ask the procedure owner, well, how's your procedure doing? What are you talking about? Yeah, well, you're the owner of this procedure. Let me see it. Okay, well, okay, yeah, that's going. We're doing very good. And can I see this piece of software? Yeah, we're not using this software anymore. Okay, why do you use this procedure? Well, it's because of quality assurance. Okay, but there are a lot of procedures going around in organizations. We're not really any use. So we always try to. We also have a quality assurance system, and we need a quality assurance system, and we need a certification. ISO is asking us, well, where's the quality assurance system? So we got a very smart system with roles within the teams. Every team is dividing 6 or 7 roles, and a quality assurance or an auditor can go to these teams and going to ask within these teams, well, what are you performing within your role? And it's also very deep in the organization, this quality feeling. Well, the culture, it's very hard to keep it in the service, in the back office. It's very hard to keep it the right culture. I've seen in my previous examples a lot of back offices were really thinking that all these people in the fields were working for them. And there were always some kind of a we and us culture. And when then the forms with all the codes came in, well, the wrong codes, again the wrong codes, and then send it back, oh, they never learn it. And this culture, it's very hard to change a culture in a back office like that. But I think, and maybe I come back when it's time, when I've got time, in changing existing organizations, changing the culture is far more complicated than changing everything in structure or procedures or protocols. And when you change it by an event or by a trigger, then it's not there forever. So you gotta always think of how to maintain this culture, this service attitude. Maybe some words about the IT strategy. When we started Buurtzorg, I started also an IT company. And we worked Scrum and Agile, and these days it was starting up, I think. Although it was very small, and the IT platform was also very small, but we did some engineers who were not trained in Agile or trained in Scrum. And when we started and when we went on, we trained them in Agile, we trained them more in Scrum. And then one day an engineer said, why should I do 1 sprint in 6 weeks? I like to do 6 sprints in 1 week. Well, there's no rule for that within our vision, so go on and make it work. And we're also very listening to the team, what they want to use as an IT. And our vision on that is when the ITs, when the Buurtzorg teams don't like it, a new feature or a new module, then simply it's not good enough. So let's quit it and try something different, because they really have to like it. And sometimes it's difficult because you've got a lot of smart people thinking about a new feature or a new module, and the people don't like it. And maybe it's sometimes you think, well, please management, tell them to use the new software because it's beautiful and it's smart and it's. But when they are not intrinsic motivated to use it, then it's over. Then we just skip it. And in these days, because in the beginning it was only one small team with 4 nurses and 1 engineer who was working in the evenings to make a platform for Buurtzorg. But from the beginning, we had the idea that Buurtzorg and Jos should never be bothered about IT. No discussions about Citrix or discussions about security or backup or data or all these kinds of things. We just said, well, you need IT for your teams, and we're gonna deliver your IT as a service. And then the Buurtzorg grew, and because of the model, we also had more income with the IT company. So we had also the opportunity to make new software, new features, and they were really, really loved to see they worked, and they had ideas about new functionality. Then they asked us, and then within 2 or 3 weeks they had something new on their dashboards, and they were, well, I've never experienced this. When we ask for new IT, then it's there within 3 weeks. With our last company, we asked it for 3 years and it never came. Well, and it was it really helped. the organization was growing, and there were more and more teams coming up, and also the IT was becoming more better and better and more comprehensive sometimes each week. I quit this because there's a lot of regular stuff within the IT, but what I found out, what my most important IT lesson was, I didn't knew that social communication could be so extremely powerful when used well within an organization. When we started 10 years ago, we had in Holland, we had Hives. Does anyone still know what Hives is? But I can see who is Dutch. Hives was Facebook in Holland, and it was very big in Holland, but it went down in 2 years, it became very big within 3 or 4 years, and it also was gone within 2 years when it was taken over by a very large media group. They didn't understand the ideas of social communication. But in these days, I was thinking, well, Facebook is for real life, and ERP and CRM and workflow management is for professional life. And these two have nothing to do with each other. But when we started with Buurtzorg, in fact, when they logged in, the first thing they saw was in fact a social community. And we encountered, because they were all new teams and new colleagues, so they really were smart of exchanging knowledge. So one team asked, well, how do you deal with Parkinson patients? Well, we always do it this way, and we always, maybe there's a specialist and you could ask them with that specific problem because he's very smart in these kind of diseases. And the teams really helped them within this community. In fact, when I came to think about it, the power of this community, it really changed my life, because when it's a company, when 10,000 people are always connected, Facebook-like, then you always know what's happening in your company. When there's troubles or problems, they come up within the community. And when people react on it, they know how what reactions are. And sometimes problems are posted, and then there's a discussion between all these knowledge workers, all these nurses, and they come up with a solution themselves. We only ask things in the community. Jos is never telling what the organization is going to do, but is always asking, well, what should we do with this problem, or what should we do with that thing? And all these discussions are very and extremely powerful. And it's very important to integrate it fully when people are logging in. I see a lot of companies copying the idea, well, we need a social community, so we buy a jammer and we tell them now how to be social with each other. Well, corporate, what we don't do, there's no strategy meetings, there's a lot of just talking to each other and hearing what's on people's mind, and talk to external people, well, how you see this and how you see that, but there's no formal structure in it. There's also no policy making. There's no big policy book. There's also no team budgeting. They're allowed to get their new colleagues when they've got enough patients and they're got enough clients and they're feeling very busy and a lot of pressure. Then they can hire new staff members. They do it themselves. Of course, we've got standards, and maybe it's very good to explain a bit about that, because there's also a lot of discussion about people getting their own salaries. But within our business, it's very negotiated by the unions. So there's a CAO, it's called in Holland. These people are not negotiating about the salary. You're just going into the union's rules, and then that's what you earn within the company. And that's that's very maybe it's important when you think of these kinds of incentives. So there's a lot of nothing. But what we do, of course, we monitor performance, because every employee is telling where they're going to, and they're filling out health records. Of course, we know, because tons of data, how teams are doing, and they know, every team knows you got to serve enough patients to be sustainable as an organization. And sometimes teams themselves are asking, well, maybe we should stop. Why? Yeah, it's very hard for us to get new patients. Yeah, but did you try this, or did you try that? Did you already went into the hospital and asked with the hospital why they don't send people to you? No, we didn't do that. Well, maybe you should do that before you're thinking you have to leave, because that's strange. The other way around is that management is saying, well, this team is not performing, maybe we should quit this team. But teams themselves are so devoted, when they're not serving enough patients, they don't feel comfort anymore. So that's this you should never thought of that when you start an organization. What you, of course, with this performance monitoring, it's about client satisfaction. It's about satisfaction of themselves. Are they still happy within the teams? And about quality, and about caseload. So it's 4 KPIs, and we don't need any more. What we also, from a corporate point of view, do is following the new legislation, and also the procurement every year. Insurance companies and think of new rules, and we don't want to bother the teams with that. So that's what we do on a corporate level. Tons of paper what we fill in. Last year it was 7 kilo. We printed all the procurement bits, and we put it on a weighting scale, and it was 7 kilo of paper just to doing the same things as the year before, but then with a new contract. What we also are doing is all these discussions within the community. We're trying to see patterns in that, trying what are people talking about, what are they worrying about, what are the nice things they talk about, what's not important, and so we try to learn from that, and we always stimulate innovation and learning when we've got our own learning system, and when people have a new idea for an innovation, or we always say, well, just try it out within your team, and when it's good, just tell it to the others. And when it's scalable, then we scale up. Then it's there for all the teams. We coach on demand. There are coaches, but the coaches they have a span of control with so many teams, so that they can't themselves connect to the team. So they only can sit down and wait for the teams to come to them. And that's, I think there are still teams within Buurtzorg who don't know who their coach is, and there are teams who are asking for a coach every week. So there are no rules for that. Sometimes a very good team is coming in a crisis, and you really need a coach. But sometimes a team who is in not performing so well is doing the other day very good without any coach involved. So there are no rules on coaching, but sometimes coaching is very helpful. And sometimes it's also really helpful when a team splits. Sometimes it becomes two new companies with a lot of energy, because there was energy within this one team. Sometimes it's really difficult to work together with other people, and I remember this from my band. There were always some little fights within the team. But that can, most of the time, it can't be managed. But a good coach can do a lot of things in that. Well, in the quality system, I already told a little bit on it. We focus really on what nurses should do and not how they should do it, and we try to describe it in roles. Well, the outcomes are very good, but you already read that, I think. We've got very satisfied employees. There's a research every year in Holland, and we won it 4 times the last 6 years for the best employer. So we are not even proud on that anymore. So it's a bit strange. We stop the contest because it's not nice anymore. Very high satisfaction rate with clients because it's een Zorgkaart Nederland. It's an independent research about customer satisfaction. And what customers like is that there are just a little small team who's looking after the patients and not 20, 30, 40 people who come in and come out. Is there still time or not? Because we want no questions, or I can also tell something about the copycats, but I think it's already time. So maybe it's when there are some questions, I can ask for questions and then leave it to here.
For example, if you wanted to invade Belgium and Germany and other countries, and you wanted to unorganically grow, the growth model is completely organic. But if you want to have like a big investment decision, that's like super high relevance.
Yeah, but we never invested.
Okay. I get the picture.
Because it delivers care, and in the end of the month, the insurance company is paying for these care delivered, and you only need to pay the wages. And when it's in the balance, then you're in business.
Go ahead.
All right. You said you hire mostly highly educated nurses, HBO. How do you then, I guess there are tasks they have to do that used to be done by lower educated people, right? Like in IT we have the same thing, and then they, like in IT people say, well, I'm not going to do that. Hey, you know. So how do you handle that in your teams? Are they willing to do the lower tasks?
Yeah, because within complex patients, they don't feel it as a lower task. And they are also scared when people with a lower education are doing this task with this complex patient, because sometimes it really harms. So they don't feel it that way. And when satisfaction rates are going down, then we should worry. But we never experience people with that from that point of view. So they don't feel it like that.
So does your company system work really well with the Dutch healthcare system? And touching on the previous question, could you see scaling it to, let's say, Germany and other European countries? How dependent is it on healthcare systems?
It's depending on healthcare systems, but it's really the speed of growth is more depending on systems, because we started in Sweden with one small team, and there came a second small team, but it's the situation there is difficult to grow because you need all kinds of in Holland we only got 5 insurance companies, but when it's divided in all local government, and every local government has to decide whether you get a contract or not, then it's becoming very difficult to grow, and you need more time to grow. So I think you can start in every country, and I think nurses all over the world are, in fact, they are the same. They're dealing with the same patients, but sometimes the culture is also very different in servicing these teams. For example, in China, we've one team in China, and with self-organizing, well, they don't get it real. They don't get the picture. But then we say, well, it's just within time, because it will, in the end, they will also love to organize their work themselves. But it's a cultural shift then, and you can't force a cultural shift. I think in Holland we are maybe a little bit used to self-organizing and don't do what the boss tells you to do. The question is what I tell as a former consultant to other organizations who are entering in. What I tell them, because there's a lot about culture, about cultural feelings and being social with each other within a company. When I come in an organization, I want to feel if the board and the CEO is really willing to change, or it's just to go with the flow and tell him he's willing to change. And I'm always figuring, is it more successful to start a transition within this organization, or should we just put it out and start a new business next to it? And I've tried both. Transformations within big organizations as a consultant the last 2-3 years. One of them succeeded very, very good, and the other one was a disaster. I'm still finding out what the difference is, but they started within the company.
Yes.
They made a greenfield within the company with real people who wanted to change. And they grew and grew and grew, and they changed the whole organization to that model, and they were very successful within 3 years. And I tried the same trick with another organization, and it was totally mismanaged within half a year. So it's still don't know what the best solution is. Sometimes I think just start over with a new company and be a smaller, better company and do that. And sometimes I think, well, you've got to start within your existing company.
I've heard about that your boss,
Jos?
is consulting other competitors
Yeah.
in terms of best practice and
Yeah, I also do. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sharing is the new having.
Yeah. So it's true.
Yeah. Thank you.